Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful Monday. As promised, this is part 2 to my how to ship your crested geckos little series, I guess. Today I'm going to be showing you how to actually package up a air quotes gecko. And this is going to be kind of some tips and tricks too on just some things you should look out for when shipping your animals. So today we're going to put together a box and I'm going to show you exactly how I ship my crested geckos, and we're going to jump right into it. So the first thing you're going to need here is a good Sharpie. Then you're going to need your hot cold pack or a cryo pack, which is what I recommend. You're also going to need your container that you're putting your gecko in. Like I said earlier, deli cups like this one with the pre-drilled holes are great. You're going to need a mister, something to wet your paper towel. You're going to need some packing tape. You cannot use Scotch tape. You're going to need like actual packing tape. Doesn't really matter which brand. You're also going to need some packing material. I'm going to be using newspaper for this video, but you could also use like paper toweling, a lot of it, packing peanuts, something that's kind of rigid but also is going to protect your gecko when shipping. Then over here, all that we have is we have our 7x7x6 box, and we have our styrofoam inserts for the box. Now, before you ship and before you fold up your box, you're going to need to fill out this little label here, this label that says wildlife, harmless live animals. What this is just a label to let them know what's in your box. So you would mark reptiles, and then you'd write one crested gecko on here if that's what you are shipping. Again, this works for any reptile. I'm just giving you a gecko example. But I'm going to go ahead and fold this up for you so you can see what it looks like folded. So here we have it just folded up. None of the flaps are taped or anything yet. So I'll show you what it looks like with the flaps down now. So I always leave the 7x7x6 or whatever size box you're using on the outside. I don't know if that's a rule or not, but I always do that just to be safe. Now here I have it taped up. And what I do with the tape is I usually do one across on each side. So as you can see here, if you can see through the glare, I have one right here going across. Then I have one going across the long way across the seam. And then I do another one on the other side to tape it up. And there's some little wrinkles in here, but that's okay. So I'll do another one like that. And then to finish it off, I do another one long way across just to give it some extra strength. That's always seemed to work for me. I've never had any issues with packaging or anything like that. But you can put more tape on it if you feel like that would help. Now that we got our box all taped up here, it's time to put in our inserts. So first you obviously got to put in your bottom insert, and these are all pre-sized depending on what size box you got. I just happen to be using the 7x7x6 because that's what I usually ship with. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to put the walls in here. It's kind of hard to hold the camera though with one hand and put these inserts in, so I'm probably going to just zoom through this and I'll come back when it's put together. Okay, just like magic, our box is finally put together. Now, the next thing to do would be to put the lid on, obviously once you have your gecko in here. But I want to talk to you a little bit about holes. Some people recommend you put holes in. In fact, Ship Your Reptiles recommends you put holes in the sides. One that goes through the box and through the foam insert. And I always do one hole. Some people will do 4 holes. I believe Ship Your Reptiles recommends 4. I always do 1, kind of in a discreet location. But that way there's just a little bit of airflow into your box. So now that we have our box put together, we're obviously going to need to get our gecko in there. Now for the sake of this video, I'm going to be using a piece of paper towel that I folded up. But normally I would just cut out like a little circle out of paper towel and stick it in there. It looks a little bit nicer. And I always try to use a couple layers of paper towel just because it holds a little bit more moisture. If you're just using one little flimsy sheet, it doesn't really hold the water that well. And you're going to need to have your paper toweling moist for your animal. You don't want to send a gecko dry. Especially if they were to get delayed or something, they're going to need the moisture in there. So the trick to this is getting it wet enough to where you're going to have moisture in there, hopefully for the whole delivery, but you don't want it so wet that when you press down your paper towel, water is dripping out of it. So I'll kind of show you that in just a minute here. So we're going to give it a good mist. We're going to pack it down a little bit. And then I'm going to show you that when I squeeze the paper towel, that no water is coming out here. It's moist, but not too wet to where it's dripping. That's exactly what you want. Next up, this is going to be our fake little gecko, this little Swiss Army knife, just for the sake of this video. So we'll put him in there. And then for a little bit of extra security, I like to put some pieces of Scotch tape on the sides just in case the lid were to pop off for some reason. You don't want your gecko getting loose in there. I know this isn't necessary, and I've never really received a box, I don't think, where it's been taped like this, but I always do it just in case. Just make sure you're not covering your holes on the side of your container when doing this, because I think this container only has 5 and you wouldn't want to cover 2 of them. Okay, so we got our little gecko in there. I'm going to put our tape down and stuck to the paper towel, or the newspaper below it, of course. But you would just tape this down, try and make it look a little bit nicer than I did in this video. But now we have our little gecko packaged up. You can see that I used a small enough container to where when this is bouncing around in the FedEx truck that our gecko is not going to be, flying into walls all over the place. And that's also another trick. You want to use the appropriate size container. You might think using a bigger container would be better, but it's actually more detrimental because let's say you put a little, 5-gram gecko in a big 16 or 32 ounce container. Well, I know you don't want to hear it, and it's sad to think about, but even though we have 100 signs on the box that says perishable or live animal or whatever, there's some people that are still going to, toss your box around, throw it around, it's going to roll around. Not always. I'm just saying that it can happen, and, you should just always expect that to happen. So you should package your gecko in something a little bit smaller, so that way it has less room to wiggle around in there. Now when I'm using this newspaper in here, what I like to do is I like to leave one side up higher, and then I leave one side lower, like you can kind of see here. The reason for this is I'm going to be using a cryo pack in this first example here. And when you put a cryo pack in, you don't want it touching directly on the gecko, so I always stick it behind this 2 layers or 3 layers of newspaper that's in the box, just like this. So you can see our cryo pack's in there and it's not touching our gecko, but it also makes the gecko very stuck in here. As you can see, I'm moving the whole box when I'm picking this up. Now, your cryo pack can turn to liquid again, so then it might flop around a little bit more, but your package is still very sturdy overall. Now to finish this up, we're just going to grab a little bit of newspaper and we're going to stick it in on the top here. The key is not to crowd your box so tight that there's no airflow in here, but just to make it tight enough to where your gecko's not bouncing around in packaging. Now I thought it would be fun to test out our shipping here. This is the exact way I ship my geckos. So I'm going to put the lid on here and I'm going to tape it up, and then we're going to give it a little test to see how well our shipping is, just to prove to you that this does actually work. So I got our box taped up here. Now let's pretend you hand it over to FedEx, right? And now it's in their truck, and then this happens. Boom, it just fell off the truck. Boom, it just got flipped over. It got kicked by someone. Got kicked again, and it's in the wall. Let's see how good our little gecko that could have been in this box held up with our packaging job. Now you'll notice I only have one piece of tape on the top here too. That was just to make it easier for me to get back into because I was going to be opening it. But normally I would do the same kind of tape job I did on the bottom, on the top. And obviously you would tape your label on the top too. The one that I printed out last video. But let's open this box up and let's see what our little gecko inside would look like. And just to note, in case someone missed the first part of the video, there's not a real gecko in here. It's just a Swiss Army knife as an example. But let's take the top off. Let's see how our little guy did. So you can see the packaging is pretty much just the way we left it. So let's take out our paper towel, and as you can see, look at that. Our little gecko is perfectly fine. Right side up, paper towel's barely even moved inside the little deli cup, and that lets you know that we did a good job packaging up our animal. And with that said, that's pretty much all there is to it. It's fairly simple. Just a couple side notes I wanted to give you for the end of the video. In this example, I was using a cryo pack, and a cryo pack is good for temperatures, I would say, between 85 and maybe, let's just say 50 to be safe. Your geckos are better off at a temperature a little bit lower, like 65, 60, than they would be at, say, like 90, 95. 90, 95, you're going to kill them very fast. 60 to 65, they're a little bit better off for a short period of time. And frankly, this video is more geared towards beginners or people who have obviously never shipped before. And if you happen to be in that category, I'd recommend using a cryo pack versus trying to use a heat pack if you're thinking about shipping in cold weather. I would definitely recommend maybe just waiting until a little bit nicer weather and using a cryo pack, because probably one of the top 5 causes, if not the top cause, of geckos or any reptile in general arriving dead on arrival is the improper use of heat packs, because you can easily get up to a crazy temperature very fast with the heat pack if you don't know what you're doing, and the temperatures are off in just a little way. You can kill your animal very quickly. So I would definitely recommend for the beginner shipper to just wait until there's nicer temperatures and then use a cryo pack. It's very safe. Now, let's say you were to use a heat pack, you would probably want to use maybe a box that's a little bit bigger, like an 8x8x7, or even a little bit bigger than that. And what you would do is you take your heat pack, you would tape it on either edge, not going over the middle because then the oxygen won't get to it, but on each edge, and you would tape it to the lid of your box. That way your heat pack is not directly touching your animal, because that's the easiest way to fry them. I mean, if your heat pack is up against the container, you're going to fry them. So you got to make sure it's taped on and taped on good, but not taped over the middle, because that'll prevent the oxygen from getting to it and reacting with what makes the heat pack warm. Also, you can use a bigger box and use cryo packs in conjunction with a heat pack, because cryo packs, their main objective, I guess you could say, is to absorb heat or cold or whatever temperature it is, and they try to maintain 72 degrees. So if you're shipping a bunch of geckos, you could use a big box with a heat pack and maybe a couple of cryo packs in there, and they can work together. Now, you can also use multiple cryo packs together if you feel like that would help. I've only ever shipped with one, maybe more than one on a couple occasions, if it's a big package that's going out. But for the most part, shipping is pretty simple. You'll probably be nervous your first time either way, because I know I was. Shipping a live animal across the country or potentially out of the country can be a little bit nerve-wracking. If you still have questions after watching this video, I would definitely recommend checking out Ship Your Reptiles website. Like I said last video, they have over 50 different questions they have answers to, and I actually went back and checked, it's more like 150. So if you can't find your answer in there, then you must have a very specific question, but definitely check that out. Otherwise, leave a comment down below and I can try and help you out. Hopefully this video helped any of you who were thinking about shipping some geckos this year. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.